My dear friends, have you ever stood before a fire so fierce it seemed no one could survive it? Imagine a blaze that consumes all doubt yet leaves faith untouched, a fire that reveals not destruction but the presence of God. Today, let me take you to ancient Babylon, to a golden idol that gleamed with earthly power, and to three men whose faith shone brighter than any flame. Their story is not just a tale of the past, it is a light for our hearts today. Will you walk with me into this furnace of faith? In the heart of Babylon, a city woven with the threads of splendor and ambition, there rose a statue that captured the gaze of all who beheld it. Towering nearly 30 meters into the heavens, it was cloaked in gold, shimmering as though the sun itself had bowed to its glory. This was no ordinary monument, no simple work of human hands. It was the shining idol of King Nebuchadnezzar II, a ruler whose name resounded like thunder across the ancient world. He had crafted this colossus not merely to adorn his city, but to proclaim his dominion, to bind every heart in his empire to his will. When the trumpets blared and the music swelled, every soul in Babylon, man, woman, child, merchant, and noble, was commanded to fall to their knees before this golden image. To refuse was to court death, to challenge the very foundations of the king's authority. Yet, my friends, pause for a moment and consider, what does it mean to bow? Is it merely the bending of a knee, or is it the surrender of something far deeper, the heart, the soul, the truth we hold dear? In that moment, Babylon was not merely a city of stone and gold, it was a battlefield where the spirit faced its greatest test. Picture the scene, as vivid as if we stood there ourselves, the air heavy with the scent of myrrh and frankincense, the music rising like a mighty river, urging every heart to yield. The idol stood as a beacon of unity, a command that none dared question, for Nebuchadnezzar believed this act would forge his empire into one mind, one purpose, his own. But what is unity if it is built on falsehood? What is loyalty if it is divorced from love? The king's decree was unambiguous: worship the idol or face the furnace. Oh, how that furnace loomed in the distance, its flames a warning to all who might harbor thoughts of defiance. The fire was no mere symbol, it was a devourer stoked to consume rebellion, to silence any whisper of another lord. Yet in the shadow of that golden giant, a different kind of strength began to stir, not the strength of armies or empires, but the quiet, unshakable courage of those who know their God. Among the countless souls who bowed, three figures stood apart: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These were not men of rebellion, seeking to carve their names in the annals of history. They were not warriors clad in armor, wielding swords against their foes. They were exiles, torn from their homeland, their lives reshaped by the chains of captivity. Yet no chain could bind their spirits, no foreign name could erase the faith that burned within them. They knew the price of their choice, for the furnace roared not far away, its heat a constant reminder of the king's wrath. Why did they stand when every instinct might have urged them to kneel? Because their hearts were anchored in a truth no fire could touch, a truth that whispered of a God who created the stars, who parted seas, who walked with his people through every valley of shadow. They stood not to defy a king, but to honor their Lord, to proclaim that no idol, however grand, could claim the worship due to him alone. The news of their refusal spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of Nebuchadnezzar himself. His heart, so accustomed to obedience, burned with a fury that shook the palace walls. How could these exiles, these captives brought low, dare to challenge the might of Babylon's king? He summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego before his throne, a seat of power adorned with the riches of conquest. The court fell silent, the air thick with tension as the king's voice thundered through the hall. "Is it true," he demanded, "that you refuse to worship my God, my idol of gold? Do you not know the fate that awaits you?" His eyes blazed with indignation, yet he offered them one final chance, a moment to reconsider, to spare themselves the flames. But the three men stood before him, their faces calm, their voices steady as the ancient hills. "O king," they said, "we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. The God we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand. But even if he does not, know this, we will not serve your gods, nor worship the golden image you have set up." Oh, my friends, what words! What faith! To stand before the might of a king, before the shadow of death itself, and declare, "Our God is enough." Their courage was not born of pride, but of a love so deep it could not be swayed, not by fear, not by fire, not by the promise of an easier path. The king's wrath erupted like a storm. Never had his authority been so openly defied. His face contorted with rage, he ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter until the very air shimmered with its ferocity. The flames leapt higher, their hunger insatiable, as if eager to consume the insolence of these 3 men. Nebuchadnezzar commanded his strongest guards to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to cast them into the heart of the fire. The furnace was a spectacle of terror, its mouth wide open, ready to swallow any who dared approach. The guards, loyal to their king, seized the 3 men, binding their hands and feet with ropes that would soon turn to ash. Yet even as they were led toward the flames, there was no fear in their eyes, only a quiet trust, a certainty that their God was near. The crowd watched, some with pity, others with scorn, as the 3 were brought to the edge of the furnace. The heat was so intense that it scorched the very ground, and the guards who carried out the king's command faltered, overcome by the fire's wrath. One by one, they fell, consumed by the blaze they had been sent to feed. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? They were not alone, even in that moment of trial. And then, my friends, something extraordinary happened, something that turned the heart of a king and the history of a people. As the 3 men were cast into the furnace, the flames did not touch them. The ropes that bound them burned away, but their bodies remained untouched. The crowd gasped, their eyes wide with disbelief, as they saw not 3 figures in the fire, but 4. Yes, 4. A 4th figure appeared, radiant and majestic, walking with them in the heart of the blaze. Who was this 4th? His form was like that of a son of the gods, shining with a light no earthly fire could rival. Nebuchadnezzar himself leapt from his throne, his voice trembling with awe. "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" he cried. "But I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the 4th is like a son of the gods. Oh, what a sight!" The furnace, meant to be a place of death, had become a sanctuary of divine presence. The flames, meant to destroy, had become a stage for God's glory. Can you imagine, my friends, the wonder of that moment? A furnace roaring with a heat so fierce it claimed the lives of mighty warriors, yet within its heart 3 men walked unscathed, joined by a 4th whose presence defied all understanding. The flames, which should have consumed them, seemed to part like a curtain, revealing not death, but life, not despair, but divine companionship. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood there, unbound, their faces radiant not with fear, but with peace. The ropes that once held them had turned to ash, yet their spirits soared free, untouched by the fire's wrath. And that 4th figure, oh, who could he be? His form was cloaked in light, his presence a mystery that stirred the soul. Was he an angel sent from the heavens? Was he a glimpse of the divine, walking with those who trusted in God? To the eyes of Babylon, he was like a son of the gods, but to those who know the Lord, he was a sign of God's unending faithfulness, a promise that he never abandons his own. King Nebuchadnezzar, whose heart had been hardened by pride, stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the furnace. The man who had commanded empires, who had built a statue to rival the heavens, now faced a power he could not comprehend. His voice, once sharp with anger, trembled as he spoke to his counselors. "Did we not cast 3 men into the fire, bound and helpless?" he asked, his words faltering. "Yet I see 4 men, walking freely, and the fire has no power over them." The crowd murmured, their hearts stirred by what they witnessed. Some whispered of sorcery, others of gods unknown. But Nebuchadnezzar knew this was no trick, no illusion of mortal hands. He stepped closer to the furnace, shielding his face from the heat, and called out, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." Oh, my friends, consider the weight of those words. The king who had demanded worship now named their God as Most High, a title no earthly ruler could claim. The 3 men emerged from the flames, their steps steady, their garments untouched by even the scent of smoke. The crowd drew back in awe, their eyes searching for some mark of the fire, some trace of its fury. But there was none. Not a hair on their heads was singed, not a thread of their robes was scorched. They stood before the king, not as captives, but as living testimonies of a God whose power knows no bounds. The officials gathered around, marveling at the miracle, their voices hushed with reverence. They had seen the furnace's hunger, had felt its heat from afar. Yet here stood these men, untouched, as if the fire itself had bowed before their faith. Nebuchadnezzar's heart, so long enthroned in pride, began to soften, like clay in the hands of a potter. He looked upon Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, not with wrath, but with wonder, and his next words echoed through the ages. "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," he declared, his voice carrying over the silent crowd. "He has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and yielded their bodies rather than serve any god except their own." Oh, what a confession! The ruler who had raised an idol of gold now proclaimed the glory of the true God. He saw in that moment that no fire, no throne, no empire could rival the one who walks with his people through the flames. But Nebuchadnezzar did not stop there. Moved by the miracle, he issued a decree that shook the foundations of Babylon. "Let no one speak against the God of these men," he commanded. "For no other God can save in this way." The crowd, once swayed by fear, now stood in awe of a power greater than their kings. The golden idol, still gleaming in the distance, seemed to fade, its glory dimmed by the light of faith. But let us pause, my friends, and reflect on what this moment means, not just for Babylon, but for us. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not merely survive the furnace, they transformed it. What was meant to be a place of punishment became a sanctuary of God's presence. Their faith did not just save them. It spoke to a king, it stirred a nation, it left a legacy that burns brightly even today. Why did they stand firm? Not for pride, not for glory, but because they knew their God. They trusted that He was with them, whether in the palace or in the fire. And their trust was not in vain. The fourth figure in the furnace reminds us that God does not watch from afar. He walks with us, He stands beside us, His presence a shield no flame can pierce. Have you ever felt a fire in your life, my friends? A trial that seemed too great, a fear that threatened to consume? Look to these three men and see that faith is stronger than fire, that God is nearer than the flames. The story of Babylon's furnace does not end with the miracle, for its ripples spread far beyond that day. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego returned to their lives, not as heroes seeking praise, but as humble servants giving thanks to their God. They had faced death and found life, had walked through fire and felt God's hand. Their story became a song in the hearts of their people, a tale told to children, a light for generations yet to come. And Nebuchadnezzar, his heart was changed, but not perfected. He had seen God's power, yet the journey of faith is long, and pride is a stubborn foe. Still, in that moment, he glimpsed a truth that no idol could obscure. The God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was the Lord of all, whose love endures beyond the rise and fall of kingdoms. What, then, is the flame of faith? It is not a fire that destroys, but one that refines. It is the courage to stand when all others kneel, to trust when all seems lost, to love when fear surrounds. The golden idol of Babylon, once a symbol of power, now lies in the dust of history. Its glory faded like a dream. But the faith of these three men burns still, a beacon for all who face their own furnaces. My friends, their story is not just a memory. It is a call. It asks us to examine our hearts, to seek the God who walks with us, to stand firm in His truth no matter the cost. For what is a furnace but a moment? And what is faith but eternity? The flames of Babylon could not silence Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the trials of this world cannot silence those who trust in God. Today, as we stand in our own time, Let this story be a mirror and a lamp. A mirror to show us the strength God has placed within us, and a lamp to guide us through the shadows. The world may raise its idols, wealth, power, fear, but none can compare to the God who saves, who loves, who never leaves us. Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, let us choose to stand, not for our own glory, but for His. Let us walk through our trials knowing that we are not alone, that the fourth figure walks with us still. And so, I invite you, my friends, to carry this story in your hearts. Share it with those you love. Let it inspire your steps. Let it remind you that faith is the flame that never dies. If this tale has touched you, leave a comment, share it with others, and perhaps, like a spark, it will kindle faith in another heart. For in the end, it is not the fire that defines us, but the God who meets us in it.